Welcome to LSAT Unplugged.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining. So I was really excited to speak with you because I understand that you're a former BU Law admissions officer. Can you share a little more about your background and what you did there?
Sure. So I am meeting you with quite a few years of admissions experience, and the most recent has been in law school admissions at Boston University. I left there in August. And so in that capacity, I worked, meeting with prospective applicants one-on-one, and meeting with prospective applicants on the road at college fairs, at law school fairs, et cetera. And then also kind of the ins and outs of the office and the operations, and reading thousands of applications, which means thousands of personal statements, and going through that process year after year.
Wow. So thousands of applications.
Yes.
Are you able to read every single application you get, or is there a sort of cutoff based on the numbers and then you only look at the applications above that threshold?
Yeah, my job would have been very boring if there were a minimum cutoff. So I was lucky to work in an office where, when we said we reviewed holistically, that's exactly what we did. We literally read everything that was submitted for every application. So that meant, every personal statement, resume, optional essays, emails that applicants submitted, as well as we required at BU, it was required that you submit 2 letters of recommendation as well. So we got other people's perspectives. So we read everything because there was a reason, why people were selecting to apply to Boston University. And so, they saw a fit in some way, shape, or form. And so we owed them the responsibility of reading the application to see if the fit, and we would be able to set people up for success on the other side.
Wow. That is really nice to hear.
Yeah.
So if you're getting these thousands of applications, no matter what their scores and GPAs are, you're looking at them. How many applications and essays does that mean you're going to be reading in a week, in a cycle? How does it break down?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the week. Largely, I was reading probably upwards of, 50 to 75 applications a week, depending upon, what else was going on, because we were also, doing webinars and trying to get as much information out as well throughout the cycle. And that meant meeting with applicants and, admitted students days and other events that were happening on campus and off. So I would say, on average, probably closer to 75 in the height of it, and, at times, 100. But once you get into the mode of it, I mean, I was not doing any other pleasure reading aside from that, because you're pretty much reading in the office and reading at home, and getting those done.
Yeah, sure. I can imagine. But I'm thinking for a minute. Okay. So let's say you did 75 a week,
Yep.
Divided across 5 to 7 days a week. Maybe that's 10, 15 applications per day.
Right.
That actually doesn't seem that I thought it would be higher. Actually, that's a lot of reading, of course, if you're looking at the various components, but
Right.
I'm sure that you get pretty practiced at evaluating a personal statement, a letter of recommendation, and any maybe adoptional essays. So how much time does that actually come down to when you're looking at an individual application?
Well, I think, it depends on the application, on how many, different sets of materials that come through. I mean, we have some applicants that are, really seizing the opportunity and sending in a lot of information and writing as much as they can, and basically saying, like, this is me, I'm going to tell you everything, and which is great. And then we have others, applicants that are, a little bit more concise and, a little bit more, less of the, inundating with the materials. And so, I think once you really get down to the nitty gritty and you feel that you are, practiced, I think it would take, 30 minutes, 45 minutes to really get a good read. And then knowing that application is also going to be eyeballed by somebody else on the committee as well. You can trust that anything that you might have missed in reading an application, others will pick up and make assessments as well. So, it is a pretty thorough practice.
So you're saying that the flow is that possibly 2 or more people are reading each application in whole?
Yes, most definitely. No, it really is a practice of committee in that applicants are being viewed by multiple eyes as they're coming through.
Yeah, of course. No, that's great. Maybe one person picks up something another missed.
Exactly. Yeah.
Can you give an example of maybe a case? You can anonymize details, of course, but maybe you caught something that another admission officer missed or vice versa. Does anything come to mind?
Nothing really comes to mind. I mean, one of the great things about working at Boston University, and it's a really smart, great team, and it truly was a place where all of the admissions representatives were very thorough and expert in their reading, but also there was that concept of we have each other's back so that we can trust that in instances like that things would be covered. But really, I wish I had a good anecdote for you, but I can't think of anything specific.
That's okay. That's okay. I've got another question for you, though, based on something you said a little earlier. You said that you gave this kind of positive opinion on the idea of applicants sending more information.
Yeah.
Like you were happy about it, or that it was good to get the additional information.
Yes.
And I'm sure a lot of students are happy to hear that, because everybody kind of wants to talk about themselves and explain away anything that might have been an issue for them or a cause for concern on their part. And so I'm wondering, when does it become too much? Is the answer always to submit more addenda, or is there a point at which it's maybe not a good idea?
Yeah, and I think that's where judgment comes in, and when you come to think of it, admissions committees are also assessing judgment, and so that's one of the things to be wary of. But I also think it is something that applicants need to do their due diligence and ask those questions of specific admissions offices. I mean, I know some of my colleagues in other admissions departments were basically like, yeah, no, we don't like addenda. We don't, we ask the questions, answer those questions, and that's the application. And our office, and then again, in my office, me specifically, I always welcomed more information, and I always encouraged applicants to try and make their application as three-dimensional as possible, and that includes information. And then also, you never want to have the admissions committee ask the question why and not have it answered in your own words. And so, if at any point in the application process, you're thinking that the admissions committee might not understand this, I'd like to explain it, then I think that's an opportunity for an applicant to step forward and explain. That said, writing a novel is not the best way to go about it, because there truly is reader fatigue as we're reading applications, day in, day out. You certainly don't want to be, the 10th application of the day. And the reader has already read, hundreds of pages of documentation at that point. We, as readers, we build in our own mechanisms to make sure that we fight off that fatigue and make sure that each applicant has a fair shot. But you also don't want to pile onto that as well as an applicant.
Yeah, of course not. I encountered a lot of applicants who maybe are writing a bit too much to explain away certain things. Is there a certain word count limit you would suggest putting on, let's say, an addendum for a low LSAT score or a low GPA?
That's a great question. I actually have never thought of it in word count. But if you're using more than one paragraph to explain, you're using too many words. You're going too far. It's a couple of sentences, one paragraph. Unless it really is a long and involved story that has many scenes and all of that, then go for it. But if a bird flew into the testing center, write a bird flew into the testing center, or there was construction noise and that affected the test. And so that information is helpful. But going too far, it then kind of gets into that kind of, I'm writing an excuse as opposed to, these are the facts. This is what happened. And, thank you for taking that into account.
Right. So you want to be a bit more matter of fact.
Yes. Yeah. Clarity and conciseness in those addenda is greatly appreciated.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. I'm wondering about, you said obviously holistic review, and I think every law school I've ever spoken to always says they do holistic review, which is a nice concept, but I'm wondering if you, and I know you said also there's not really a hard cutoff for numbers, but at the same time, I would imagine that BU wasn't taking a lot of people with 125s on the LSAT.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing, is that while there's no hard cutoff in counseling prospective applicants and working with applicants, I would say there's no hard cutoff. That said, look at our 25th and 75th. Look at our range of LSAT scores that have been accepted. Look at our GPAs. Those quantitative measures are helpful in that they are guideposts. They're not the be all and end all, but they are guideposts, and they are statistically significant in predicting success in first year of law school. And so again, they're helpful in making those assessments. But there are other factors that are at play. And while it was never the case where a 125 was admitted while I was at BU. We did have some applicants with lower LSAT scores that had performed very well on a day-to-day basis in their college transcript, and wrote very well and had very interesting perspective, and had very compelling reasons for attending law school, and had embraced opportunities and had done some really cool things. And so, we are looking at, an admissions committee is assessing areas of strength, and what they are hopeful of doing is, one, building a community, and then two, setting applicants up for success. And so taking all of those factors into play, it's not necessarily just boiled down to, one quantitative measure. So that's where the no minimum comes in. But at the same time, given the statistical significance, given the competitiveness of the applicant pool as a whole, the chances of doors remaining open with lower scores is problematic for applicants.
Naturally. So there are two directions I want to go on this. The first one relates to this idea of experience to demonstrate that you do have what it takes. Mm-hmm. Are there any applicants you saw during your time at BU or during your time now as a private admission consultant where you've seen applicants demonstrating that through their work experience or in college?
Oh, certainly. And that was, I think I mentioned earlier, is that, my job was certainly not boring. And one of the reasons why it was not boring is the amazing applicants that were coming across my desk, and the wonderful things that and opportunities that applicants were seizing and taking charge of and doing. I mean, like, I was sitting there, and I would, at the end of the day, I'd be like, what am I doing with my life? And these kids are great. And so certainly there were a number of things that our applicants were doing, and then at the same time, not to disparage other applicants that, didn't have those opportunities and, were working all through undergrad and putting themselves, through college and other financial kind of obstacles that they were overcoming. That's another piece that's also amazing. And, and looking at that. And so, while they might not have been, in the Peace Corps and saving a community from a water shortage, we had many applicants who were, financially supporting their younger siblings and things. So there, that in and of itself is an amazing feat, to be able to sustain a great undergraduate education as well as paving opportunities for younger siblings. So yeah, I mean, there were many different and diverse applicants that were coming through that had done pretty amazing things.
Oh, wow. So it sounds like they don't have to obviously have done something newsworthy. It could be everyday heroes.
Exactly.
Kind of showing up powerfully in their own communities.
Exactly. Yeah. I would say that we're not looking for people that have cured cancer or have run marathons in their bare feet. It's just a matter of, have you been successful in the classroom? Have you made an impact in your own life? And that might have trickled and made an impact in those around you, because that's essentially what, when I mentioned building communities, that's essentially what admissions committees are looking to do is, are you going to, one, be able to be successful in the classroom for your own benefit and edification, but is what you're going to do kind of going to trickle and impact the students that are sitting next to you or sitting across from you, or, that you'll be meeting later down the road. So those are the things that we're taking into account.
Oh, great. The other thing I wanted to bring up is this idea of the LSAT score making a difference either in the admission process or when it comes to getting financial aid. Yeah. I'm wondering, I've heard from a number of admission officers that even just a couple of more points can make the difference between a yes and a no, or between getting no merit aid versus getting potentially tens of thousands of dollars in merit aid. So I'm wondering if you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, the quality of the applicant pool, the numbers in the applicant pool are kind of affecting how schools are looking at their applicant pool. And so, as you stated, a couple of points on the LSAT is going to open some more doors and create a little bit more of an impact in your application, both for admissions purposes and then down the road for financial aid. At Boston University, it was great in that they had one of the largest, or have likely still this year, one of the largest applicant pools in the country. And so it was a wonderful opportunity to see a really large portion of those applicants that were applying to law school each year. And it also allowed us to be selective and to really, parse through and pick applicants and ultimately future students that we thought would really take advantage of what Boston University had to offer, which is a lot. And so in that, there were different pieces that, were rewarded, and LSAT was one of the components, but as, in the financial aid process, Boston University also looked at all other components as well. So, I know it's like, oh, you're listening to an admissions person say holistic. It was, the same in that it wasn't just a dollar figure assigned to a specific LSAT score. It was all other components as well that were taken into account in looking at scholarship dollars. But certainly, I think the advice of, making sure that you are prepared for the LSAT and not just winging it, which always, it's such an expensive endeavor to just wing it, and see how it goes and see how I'll do, and, kind of use the first one as a benchmark. That always, I always think like, because it's truly, it's an investment of time and money, and it's an investment into your future. And so put some preparation in, and so that you do make sure that, you're putting that, as in all aspects of your application, you're putting the best, lens on the LSAT score as well.
Yeah, of course. When it comes to maybe on the other end, now that you're working as a private admissions consultant, how do you help applicants in terms of navigating scholarship offers, negotiating potentially financial aid offers between schools? What advice do you give them?
Well, one of the advice that I give, and this is advice I gave, while an admissions counselor, is there are admissions and financial aid offices across the country that have working phones and working emails, and so ask questions. So certainly, open doors, and one, be polite. Politeness is the rule of the game. This is not a demand. This is not like I need to show that I am an aggressive negotiator, because that's what people are looking for in law school. That's not the case at all, because admissions offices and financial aid offices are human beings, and actually they're lovely human beings across the board. And they are, looking to help each individual applicant make the best decisions for themselves. And so, ask the questions of whether or not, can my financial aid package be evaluated? I have offers from other schools, and attach PDFs of those award letters and say, is there an opportunity for a reevaluation? And, and certainly, the worst that can happen is a financial aid office or an admissions office will say no. And then, okay, you asked the question and you got your answer. But then there's also the opportunity that some schools will open up a dialogue and ask to reevaluate, ask for more information as to what your financial aid situation really is. Because that the FAFSA and other, forms that schools ask for are pretty cut and dry. And so you can't really give your own narrative as to what your financial aid situation is and truly is. And especially with students who may have had financial assistance from their parents or others in their family for their undergraduate. And then parents and families are basically saying, okay, for graduate, you're on your own. And, the 22-year-old, 23-year-old who has to submit parental information is like, well, that's not doing me any good because they're not forking the bill. This is all me. And so, information like that can be helpful to financial aid offices as well. But as we were talking earlier about, how much information is too much information. And, again, that's where judgment comes into play. And, kindness kills in this aspect as well, as, make sure that every interaction you're having is, in a way that is not demanding, is not showing a sense of entitlement or, kind of you work for me type of thing. And, that opportunity, it's a privilege to be admitted to these great institutions. And so it should be treated as such.
Yeah, of course. And given your long time at BU, I'm wondering if you can share a bit about what BU law has to offer in particular and some factors students might want to consider when deciding where to apply.
Yeah, I mean, one of the great things, and I talked about this, is just the community at Boston University is amazing. And that's, the admissions office, the financial aid office, and again, that's a perspective I was speaking of as far as, applicants ask questions and seek out the answers, from the admissions office and, getting information from other sources and forums and podcasts obviously are great and helpful, but it's always best to kind of get to the source as well. And help out that way. And so Boston University, the community is top notch. I mean, that's again from kind of your first invitation in through the admissions office and the financial aid office, and then the faculty are amazing and really accessible to students. First year and beyond. It really and that was one of the aspects when we were reviewing applications. We're looking for applicants that had taken advantage of opportunity, whatever that opportunity, and had worked hard and had made impacts. And because that's also what, Boston University wanted the students to do, is that there are so many great opportunities at BU and in the Boston area and beyond that BU has put in place. And so certainly taking advantage of that is a benefit to the applicants and the students, and feeling that your investment is being equally supported by the staff and the community at Boston University. And they certainly had that.
Yeah, it sounds like they really have the resources to serve their students well.
Definitely. Yeah, most definitely.
Excellent. Well, Christine, this has been a pleasure. Can you share a bit more about your work with applicants now that you're outside of the admissions office on the other side, working with folks one-on-one?
Yes. So I accepted this fall. After leaving BU, I actually, while at BU, one of the great benefits of being an employee was that you were able to take some graduate courses. And so I had started a graduate program in the School of Social Work. And so unfortunately, in order to continue in the program, I had to leave my job because of internships, et cetera. And so was seeking, some part-time employment that I could do remotely. And speaking with Linda Abraham at Accepted, she is fantastic and runs a really great program to assist students through the application process and giving information as far as school choice and what admissions committees are looking for in a personal statement, which is always so hard to start when you're an applicant. And so from this end, it's really interesting to get that perspective, because I felt it. I mean, I knew, representing Boston University and meeting with students and talking with students, they, the look on their faces when, like, I'm trying to start my personal statement. and so it's nice to be able to work with students. And one of the things that when I was at BU, and I do it now through Accepted, is, in talking about that personal statement, I always ask the question, well, why do you want to go to law school? And I get into a conversation with an applicant, and they're, well, this is the reason, and that was the reason. And, and I'm like, well, that's your personal statement. Put that down on paper, make an outline out of that, and that's exactly where you're going to go. And so, so it's really nice to be able to help individuals kind of slay the beast of that stress and the anxiety that's building up as you're applying to law schools, and assist in finding the right fit and making sure that applicants are making the right decision for themselves, because again, it is such an investment of time and money, and you want to be making sure you're making the good choices for yourself.
Well, it sounds like you're offering a great service to applicants and helping make the process a lot more manageable.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I hope so.
I'm sure you are. And what's the best way for students to reach you if they're interested in asking questions or possibly working with you?
Easily, just Google accepted.com, and we have a great website. It's an easy website to look through, and once you're on the homepage, just click on law school admissions, and that will give you all of the information, both my personal information and how to contact me directly, and you can ask questions before clicking on or purchasing any packages. You can certainly ask questions, and we can talk through what your needs are, and what I can help you with, and move forward from there.
Great. Well, I'll make sure to link to that in the description for this episode.
Thank you.
Christine, thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Great to meet you.
Take care. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.